Hey there, my friends. Dan Beer here with the Beer Home Team. Keller Williams, #1 producing team for the brokerage across the entire Southern California region, and an Inc. 5000 company. And I want to hit on solar here very quickly today. Buying versus leasing. The two have very different implications, particularly at the time that you go to sell your property. And it's really just constantly amazing to me how uninformed we often are. And that's not putting the burden on you. That's really that depending on what company, what solar company you've chosen to engage, often just based on their marketing, they often have an agenda. There's companies that are very specifically geared toward buying, and those that are pretty much exclusively going to push a lease agreement, or what they call a power purchase agreement, which really gives you complications at the time that you go to sell your property. My recommendation is that whenever possible, buy the solar. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to come out of pocket directly. It doesn't mean you have to come out of pocket and just pay the whole thing off. In fact, that's what makes it so much more confusing to me that not everybody buys solar, because you could buy, but you could buy through a loan, often phenomenal terms when you're buying through the loan. And when you're doing that, you essentially have an equal payment to any lease. But the key point is that when you go to sell your property, when you've purchased, if you've bought it outright, obviously the whole thing just transfers to the buyer. It's all value that you get to market to your buyer. And if you've bought it, but you've bought it through a loan, of course you'll pay the loan off. But typically, you might have this much equity and that big of a loan on the solar, so you're typically just not really affected by having to pay that loan off. While on the flip side, if you have leased your solar, what you need to be aware of, that they will not always illustrate to you depending on the salesman you're working with in the solar industry, is that if you have leased your solar, you've now placed your property where your buyer must not only qualify for your property for the mortgage on the purchase of your property, that they also now have to qualify on top of that for the solar payment, for the lease payment, which will then transfer with the home. So essentially, you're forcing buyers to take on the responsibility of the lease payments that you've chosen to make. And depending on your price point and the sensitivity of the market, that could squeeze out some buyers from qualifying for your property. Specifically, if you have a home that's closer to median price point, where you have a lot of FHA buyers, VA buyers, that people that don't tend to have such large down payments, you often are going to squeeze people out of the marketplace of being able to qualify for your home, because they need to qualify not only for the mortgage, but also the lease payment on top of it. That's the primary reason I would always recommend you go with the purchase. Not to mention the fact that with the purchase, you also get the tax credits, okay? So they've thankfully kept the tax credits in place, and you have tax credits that come back to you on the purchase. Understand that when you're leasing, part of the business model of those companies, like a Sunrun, there's others out there that are primarily going to almost always just push the lease, is they actually get the tax credit for buying the system and then leasing it to you. So it's part of their revenue model. So my recommendation is talk to your real estate agent, okay? If you have somebody you're working with on the Beer Home Team, reach out to us. If you don't have somebody and you just want a real estate conversation to see how this would affect your purchase or your sale, talk to us. And if you have somebody that you lean on and trust, then fantastic. That's the key, is have someone you can lean on and trust, not only at the time of buying and selling, but someone that's willing to dedicate time, effort, and energy to you outside of buying and selling, and actually act like a consultant throughout your entire ownership experience. This is the Beer Home Team. We're thrilled to be able to serve you at just such a high level. It's been an incredible year we're coming out of in 2017, another record year, and we look forward to serving in an even deeper way here in 2018. Those of you that are already clients of ours, reach out about the Client Perk Program, which we've added even more to. And like I said, looking forward to serving. Have an awesome, awesome week.